Before humanity learned how to make war, before beauty became a weapon, there was an angel whose knowledge would forever alter the fate of the world. In the shadows of early history, long before the Great Flood reshaped the earth, a group of celestial beings descended from the heavens. They were known as the Watchers, sent to observe and guide the fledgling human race. But their mission took a dark and fateful turn when one among them decided that observation was not enough. This powerful and influential angel chose to intervene, to share forbidden secrets that humanity was never meant to possess. His name was Azazel, and according to ancient scripture, what he taught humanity was never meant to be known. The Book of Enoch, a text once considered scripture by early Christians and Jews, paints a vivid picture of this transgression. It describes how Azazel and his followers took human wives and fathered a race of giants, the Nephilim, who filled the earth with violence and consumed its resources. Yet Azazel's greatest sin was not only this act of defiance, it was the knowledge he imparted. He became humanity's first teacher of the forbidden arts. Azazel taught men how to forge weapons of destruction. Imagine a world that had only known simple tools, suddenly introduced to the craft of making swords, shields, and knives. Molten metal poured into molds, blades forged in fire, the gleam of sharpened steel. This knowledge was not about improving hunting or farming. Azazel taught the art of warfare, transforming simple disputes into bloody conflicts and arming humanity against itself. In doing so, he planted the seeds of perpetual violence that would plague human history for millennia. The knowledge of how to kill efficiently and systematically originated from this celestial betrayal. But Azazel's teachings did not stop at physical violence. He also introduced the instruments of vanity, teaching women the art of cosmetics, the crafting of jewelry from precious metals, and the value of one's reflection in polished bronze mirrors. Though this may sound harmless, ancient texts describe it as a profound corruption. It fostered jealousy, pride, and deceit, turning beauty from a natural gift into a tool of seduction and social power. The focus of humanity shifted from inner virtue to outward appearance, reshaping relationships and societal values. Knowledge that reshaped the human heart and corrupted it spread rapidly across the world. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. Cities once at peace were engulfed in conflict as warriors clashed in brutal battles, armed with the deadly knowledge Azazel had provided, while fires burned and chaos spread across the land. The Book of Enoch names Azazel among the Watchers, but his crimes set him apart. While others taught various arts, Azazel was blamed for the fullness of sin that followed and was seen as the chief corrupter of humanity. For his transgressions, Azazel's punishment was severe. The archangel Raphael was commanded to bind him and cast him into the desolate abyss of Dudale, where he would remain chained beneath jagged rocks until the day of final judgment. This is not merely a story of rebellion, but a warning about knowledge given without wisdom. Azazel's tale echoes through history as an explanation for the origins of war, vanity, and evil, a chilling reminder of how a gift became a poison that forever changed the course of human existence. Thank you for joining us on this journey into ancient lore. Have you ever wondered where the art of war truly began? We often look to history, to the rise and fall of empires, to famous battles and legendary generals. But what if the origins of warfare are much older, much darker, and not entirely human. Today, we re-diving deep into one of the most mysterious and controversial texts ever discovered, the Book of Enoch. This ancient manuscript, once lost to time, tells a story that challenges everything we thought we knew about human history. It speaks of a time before the Great Flood, a time when celestial beings walked among us. These beings, known as the Watchers, were sent to observe humanity, but some of them did far more than just watch. According to the Book of Enoch, a leader among these fallen angels, a figure named Azazel, committed an act that would forever alter the course of human destiny. The text is chillingly specific. It says, "And Azazel taught men to make swords, and knives, and shields, and breastplates." Imagine a world where the most sophisticated weapons were simple hunting tools, where conflict was raw and primal. Now, picture the sudden introduction of forged steel, of blades designed not just to hunt animals, but to kill other humans with terrifying efficiency. This wasn't a gradual evolution, it was a revelation, a dark gift from a celestial being. The Book of Enoch paints a vivid picture of this moment. Blacksmiths hammering glowing metal, sparks flying in the firelight, the sound of steel on steel echoing for the first time. This was the birth of metallurgy for the purpose of war. Before Azazel, humanity's struggles were largely against the natural world, a fight for survival. After Azazel, a new, more sinister conflict emerged, the fight for domination. The knowledge of creating armor and weapons spread like a wildfire. Suddenly, tribes could arm themselves, protect themselves, and, most importantly, attack their neighbors. The simple shield could deflect a spear, the steel sword could shatter a wooden club. It created a terrifying arms race in the ancient world. Power was no longer just about strength or numbers, it was about technology. And this technology was a curse disguised as a gift. The desire for resources, for land, for power, was now backed by the cold, hard reality of sharpened steel. The very fabric of human society began to unravel. The consequences, as described in Enoch, were catastrophic. The text states that as this knowledge spread, the whole earth was corrupted. Violence wasn't just an occasional occurrence, it became a way of life. The ancient map of the world, once a patchwork of scattered tribes, was now marked by spreading symbols of conflict and bloodshed. Betrayal, injustice, and oppression multiplied. The earth, which was meant to be a cradle for humanity, was filled with cries of anguish. It's a haunting image, the very ground stained with the blood of brother fighting brother, all thanks to a forbidden knowledge that was never meant for mortal hands. This wasn't just warfare, it was a spiritual corruption, a sickness that infected the soul of humanity itself. And what of the heavens during all this chaos? The Book of Enoch tells us that the angels and the watchers who remained loyal looked down upon the earth in horror. They saw the creation they were meant to guide slipping into a spiral of self-destruction. They witnessed the innocent suffering and the wicked prospering through the very tools Azazel had provided. Their solemn gazes saw a world descending into chaos, a failed experiment on the brink of collapse. This celestial perspective adds another layer of tragedy to the story. It wasn't just humanity falling, it was a cosmic failure, a rebellion in heaven that had devastating consequences on earth. The heavens watched as the world they were sworn to protect was consumed by violence. Now, Let's connect this to what we know from archaeology and history. The transition from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age and then the Iron Age was a pivotal moment for civilization. With new metals came new tools, but also deadlier weapons. Archaeologists find evidence of fortified cities and brutal battlefields dating back thousands of years. We see ancient art depicting warriors clad in armor, wielding swords and shields, looking remarkably like the descriptions from the Book of Enoch. Could this ancient text be an allegorical explanation for humanity's sudden leap in military technology? Is it a mythological memory of a time when a technological revolution led to an explosion of organized violence? It's a fascinating thought. The story of Azazel provides a powerful narrative for a change that we know happened, but whose precise catalyst is often debated by historians. So, who was Azazel really? In later traditions, the name becomes synonymous with a scapegoat, a desert demon to whom the sins of the people were symbolically transferred. But in Enoch, his role is much more direct, more sinister. He isn't just a symbol of sin, he is the source of the tools of sin. He is the original arms dealer, the first corrupting influence who weaponized human ambition. This makes him one of the most compelling and terrifying figures in ancient literature. He didn't force humanity to do anything. He simply gave them the power to destroy themselves, and then watch them do it. It's a timeless story about technology, power, and the choices we make. The gift of fire can warm a home or burn it down. The gift of steel can build a plow or a sword. Azazel, according to Enoch, gave us the sword. This narrative forces us to ask some uncomfortable questions. Is humanity inherently violent, or is violence something we learned? If we were given a forbidden technology today, a power we weren't ready for, how would we use it? The story of Azazel is more than just an ancient myth. It's a cautionary tale that resonates powerfully in our modern age of technological wonders and terrifying new weapons. It serves as a stark reminder that knowledge without wisdom is one of the most dangerous forces in the universe. The legacy of Azazel, whether you interpret it as a literal account or a powerful metaphor, is the enduring struggle within the human heart between creation and destruction, a struggle that began with the first forged blade and continues to this day. As we look back at this ancient story, it is clear why the Book of Enoch was considered so dangerous and controversial by many early religious authorities. It presents a version of history where humanity's fall wasn't just about a forbidden fruit, but about a forbidden technology. It implicates celestial beings directly in the corruption of the world, but it also offers a profound insight into our own nature. The story of Azazel isn't just about a fallen angel. It's about the moment humanity gained the power to wage war on an unprecedented scale. It's the story of how we learn to kill, not just to survive, but to dominate. And as heaven watched, creation itself hung in the balance. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the Book of Enoch. What are your thoughts on the story of Azazel? Do you see parallels in our world today? Have you ever wondered about the origins of makeup and jewelry? Why do we find certain adornments so captivating, so irresistible? Ancient texts offer a startling perspective, one that traces these arts not to human ingenuity, but to a celestial being with a dark agenda. This is the story of Azazel, and how he allegedly taught humanity the art of seduction. In the early days of humanity, According to certain apocryphal traditions, life was simple, unadorned. There was an innocence to existence. But this was all about to change with the arrival of the Watchers, a group of angels who descended to earth. Among them, one named Azazel stood out. He wasn't content with just observing humanity. He wanted to interfere, to alter its very nature. While his celestial brothers taught other skills, Azazel focused on something far more intimate, far more personal. He revealed to humankind the secrets of the earth, not for farming or for building, but for beautification. He showed them how to mine for precious metals, how to unearth glistening stones from deep within the ground. He taught them to craft these materials into shimmering ornaments. Gold, silver, and radiant gems were no longer just parts of the earth. They became symbols of status, power, and, most importantly, attraction. He taught women how to make bracelets, necklaces, and rings that would catch the light in the eye. But his teachings didn't stop there. Azazel went further, revealing the secrets of cosmetics. He showed them how to use kohl to outline their eyes, making them appear larger, more mysterious, more alluring. He introduced powders and paints to smooth the skin and color the lips and cheeks. This wasn't just about art, it was about transformation. It was the birth of an industry built on altering one's natural appearance to project a specific image, to evoke a specific response, desire. Imagine the world before this. Beauty was natural, unenhanced. Now, suddenly, there was a new kind of beauty, a manufactured beauty. Women, adorned with these new arts, became captivating in a way they never had been before. The focus shifted from inner character to outward appearance. The Book of Enoch, an ancient Hebrew apocalyptic text, describes it vividly. It says Azazel taught men the art of making swords and knives, but for women, he taught the art of deception through decoration. Why would an angel teach such things? According to these ancient narratives, Azazel's goal was corruption. He understood a fundamental aspect of human nature. We are visual creatures. By teaching the art of adornment, he introduced vanity and jealousy into the world. A woman might look at another's jewelry with envy. A man might be captivated by a painted face, ignoring the substance of the person behind it. The very fabric of society began to change. The introduction of these vanities had a cascading effect. Desire, once a natural impulse, became something that could be manipulated and amplified. Lust, according to these texts, ran rampant. The natural order was disrupted. People became obsessed with their external selves, neglecting their spiritual and moral development. The simple humility of early humanity was replaced by a competitive, materialistic pursuit of beauty. This new focus on the superficial was a distraction, pulling humanity's gaze away from the heavens and fixing it firmly on each other and on the mirror. Ancient theologians saw this as a profound spiritual decay. The corruption wasn't just external, it seeped inward. As people became more preoccupied with their looks and possessions, they became less concerned with kindness, justice, and piety. The glitter of gold and the allure of a perfectly made-up face were, in essence, a spiritual trap. Azazel had found a way to corrupt humanity from the inside out, using our own desires against us. This story from the Book of Enoch paints a dramatic picture of Azazel as the ultimate corrupter. the bringer of technologies that led to humanity's moral downfall. It's a powerful allegory about the dangers of vanity and materialism. It asks us to consider the true source of our desires for beauty and adornment. Are they innocent expressions of creativity, or do they tap into something deeper, something more primal and potentially destructive? Of course, this is just one interpretation from ancient, non-canonical texts. Today, we see makeup and jewelry as forms of self-expression, art, and cultural identity. But the story of Azazel serves as a timeless cautionary tale. It reminds us to look beyond the surface, to question the value we place on external appearances, and to be mindful of the line between healthy self-expression and obsessive vanity. It suggests that the most beautiful things in the world can sometimes have the darkest origins. So the next time you put on a necklace or apply mascara, you might think of this ancient story. It's a fascinating lens through which to view our modern world, a world saturated with images of manufactured perfection. It forces us to ask, in our pursuit of beauty, what are we truly seeking? And what might we be sacrificing in the process? The tale of Azazel whispers from the past, a warning that the most effective chains are not always made of iron, but sometimes of gold. Have you ever wondered what happened to the fallen angels who rebelled against heaven? The Bible mentions them, but other ancient texts go into far greater detail. One of the most fascinating and terrifying accounts comes from the Book of Enoch, a text that was revered by early Christians but eventually excluded from most biblical canons. It tells the story of a rebellion that nearly destroyed humanity, and the grim fate of its leader. This story begins with a group of angels known as the Watchers. They were sent to Earth to observe and guide humanity, but they grew to desire human women, a desire that led them to abandon their sacred duty. They descended upon Mount Hermon and made a pact, a solemn oath to take human wives and father children with them. Their leader, a powerful angel named Azazel, was central to this rebellion, but his sins went far beyond just lust. The Book of Enoch paints Azazel as the ultimate corrupting influence. He didn't just break a celestial law, he actively sought to unravel the fabric of human society. He taught men the art of war, how to forge swords, shields, and breastplates. Imagine a world that had known relative peace suddenly being introduced to sophisticated weaponry and the craft of killing. This knowledge didn't just lead to skirmishes, it ignited widespread violence and bloodshed across the land. But Azazel's corruption didn't stop there. He taught women the art of deception, showing them how to use cosmetics, paint their eyelids with kohl, and adorn themselves with expensive jewelry and precious stones to entice men. The text presents this not as simple beautification, but as a gateway to vanity, promiscuity, and the breakdown of familial bonds. He revealed forbidden knowledge, the secrets of sorcery, astrology, and divination. He taught humanity how to read the stars not for navigation, but to challenge divine providence, to seek power for themselves. The consequences were catastrophic. The offspring of the Watchers and human women were the Nephilim, a race of violent giants who devoured everything in the path. They consumed the crops, the animals, and eventually, they turned on humanity itself. The world descended into chaos. Violence, corruption, and lawlessness reigned. The cries of the oppressed rose to the heavens, a desperate plea for salvation from the turmoil Azazel and his cohorts had unleashed. The earth itself was stained with blood and wickedness. God did not ignore the cries of humanity or the gross influence of Azazel. The plea for help reached the archangels Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel. They looked down from heaven and saw the rivers of blood, the injustice, and the destruction that had consumed the world. They brought this report before God, detailing the forbidden secrets Azazel had taught, secrets that had filled the earth with sin. And the divine judgment that followed was swift and severe. The archangel Raphael was commanded to deal with Azazel directly. God did not ignore Azazel's influence. The divine order was specific and terrifying. The Book of Enoch says Azazel was to be bound hand and foot. Imagine the sheer power required for one archangel to subdue another. Raphael seized Azazel and cast him not into a simple prison, but into the desolate wilderness of Dudale. The scripture describes a pit being opened in the desert, and Azazel being thrown into the oppressive darkness. His prison was not meant to be comfortable. He was buried beneath a sharp and jagged rocks, a brutal, physical torment to match his spiritual corruption. This wasn't just imprisonment, it was a living burial. The darkness was absolute, a stark contrast to the divine light he once knew. Chains were used to bind him, ensuring he could not escape his torment. Silence descended upon the pit, a profound emptiness that would be his only companion. And this was not a temporary punishment. He was condemned to remain there, covered in darkness, until the day of the great judgment. On that final day, he would be cast into the fire, the ultimate and eternal punishment for his rebellion. His face was covered so that he could no longer see the light, a symbolic gesture sealing his fate and cutting him off from the divine presence forever. The darkness of the pit was both a physical and spiritual reality, a complete separation from the God he had defied. But what about the world he had so thoroughly corrupted? The damage he caused could not be so easily undone. The teachings of war, sorcery, and vanity had taken deep root in the human soul. The very land was defiled by the presence of the Nephilim and the sins of mankind. So, a purification was necessary. A great cleansing was ordered to wash away the wickedness that had saturated the earth. This cleansing came in the form of the Great Flood. The floodgates of heaven opened, and the waters of the deep rose, consuming the ancient world. The Nephilim were destroyed, and the corrupted lineage of the watchers was wiped from the face of the earth. Only Noah and his family were spared, chosen to begin humanity anew, on a world washed clean of the sins instigated by Azazel. The flood was a reset, a tragic but necessary act to save humanity from total self-destruction. Yet, even after the flood, the knowledge Azazel had introduced lingered. The seeds of violence, pride, and forbidden arts were planted, and their roots run deep even today. The story of Azazel serves as a powerful allegory for the origin of evil and the corrupting nature of forbidden knowledge when wielded without wisdom or morality. It's a stark reminder of the celestial conflict that, according to these ancient texts, has shaped human destiny from the very beginning. The Book of Enoch offers a unique and compelling perspective on the classic story of fallen angels. It expands upon the brief mentions in Genesis, giving names, motives, and consequences to the beings who chose to defy their Creator. While it may not be part of the official Bible for most, its influence on early Christian and Jewish thought is undeniable. It tackles profound questions about free will, temptation, the nature of evil, and divine justice. The tale of Azazel, bound in darkness and awaiting final judgment, is a chilling narrative. It underscores a central theme, that actions have consequences, and rebellion against the divine order leads to ruin, not just for the rebel, but for everyone they influence. It's a story that is echoed through millennia, a dark legend of an angel who brought knowledge that led not to enlightenment, but to the brink of annihilation. What do you think about this story? Does it change your perspective on the tales of fallen angels and the Great Flood? Have you ever wondered if the problems we face today, our conflicts, our vanities, our endless pursuit of more, are truly new? Or are they just echoes of a very, very old story? The Book of Enoch, a text considered too radical for the Bible, tells a tale that might just hold the answer. It speaks of a time before the Great Flood, when celestial beings known as the Watchers descended from the heavens. Led by a figure named Samjaza, 200 of these angels made a pact on Mount Hermon. They were meant to be guardians, mentors to humanity, but they broke their sacred oath. They lusted after human women, and from their union, a new race was born, the Nephilim, giants who roamed the earth. These weren't just big people. They were described as beings of immense power and voracious appetites, consuming everything in their path and turning on humanity itself. The world plunged into chaos. The Watchers didn't just bring corruption through their offspring. They introduced what the ancient texts call forbidden knowledge. Imagine, overnight, humanity being given secrets it wasn't ready for. The art of making weapons, the craft of cosmetics and adornments, the secrets of sorcery and incantations. One name stands out among these teachers of forbidden arts, Azazel. It was he who taught men how to forge swords and shields, filling the world with bloodshed. He taught women the art of beautification, using makeup and precious stones, sparking vanity and desire. Think about it. Warfare and the obsession with appearance. Doesn't that sound familiar? The very things that define this ancient corruption are still major forces shaping our world today. The text describes how this knowledge corrupted humanity's soul, leading them away from virtue and into a spiral of violence and depravity. The cries of the oppressed reached the heavens, and the archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, looked down and saw the earth filled with blood and injustice. They brought the case before God, who then pronounced judgment upon the world and the fallen angels who had ruined it. This is where the story of Noah's Ark begins. The Great Flood wasn't just a random catastrophe. It was a divine reset button, an attempt to wash the world clean of the corruption sown by the Watchers and their giant offspring. The Nephilim were wiped from the face of the earth, and the rogue angels were bound and cast into darkness to await their final judgment. But what happened to Azazel, the master of forbidden knowledge? The texts say he was bound hand and foot and cast into an abyss in the desert, a place called Dudale. A great, jagged rock was placed over him, sealing him in total darkness until the great day of judgment. This punishment was specific. By bringing darkness upon the earth through his teachings, he was sentenced to an eternity of it. It's a powerful image, the source of so much chaos, literally buried under a rock. But did his influence really end there? The traditions that sprung up around this story are fascinating. In later Jewish tradition, The scapegoat ritual on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, is directly linked to him. One goat was sacrificed to God, but another, bearing the sins of the entire nation, was sent out into the wilderness for Azazel. It was as if humanity was annually sending its corruption back to the source, a symbolic act of purification. This paints Azazel not just as a tempter, but as a kind of cosmic receptacle for sin itself. But let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Why was this knowledge forbidden in the first place? Was it inherently evil? Or was it simply that humanity wasn't mature enough to handle it? Think of giving a child a loaded weapon. The weapon itself is neutral, but in the hands of one who doesn't understand its power and consequence, it's catastrophic. The Watcher's gifts were like that. Metalworking leads to both tools and swords. Chemistry leads to both medicine and poison. Knowledge of the stars leads to both navigation and astrology used for divination. The story suggests that progress without wisdom is a recipe for disaster. This is a timeless warning. Today, we are grappling with our own forms of forbidden knowledge. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, digital surveillance. We are wielding powers our ancestors couldn't have dreamed of, and we are often too captivated by what we can do to stop and ask if we should. Are we, in our own way, repeating the mistakes of the past? Are our modern technologies and societal obsessions simply new masks worn by the same ancient forces of pride, conflict, and vanity that Azazel allegedly unleashed? The story of the Watchers serves as a profound allegory. It's about the responsibility that comes with power and knowledge. It's about the fine line between advancement and corruption. The angels who were supposed to guide humanity ended up leading it to the brink of annihilation. Now, let's bring it back to the present. We see war still defining nations, shaping borders and economies with ever more sophisticated weapons. We see vanity shaping identity, with social media and the beauty industry creating insatiable desires for physical perfection. The text from the Book of Enoch acts like a mirror, reflecting our own society. Was Azazel merely a fallen angel of the past, a mythological figure to explain the origins of sin? Or was his story a warning written into history, a cautionary tale about the enduring nature of temptation and the dangers of unchecked ambition? It makes you wonder, because forbidden knowledge never disappears. It only changes form. It evolves with us, presenting itself in new, more seductive ways with each passing generation. The sword becomes the drone. The coal eyeliner becomes the digital filter. The fundamental challenges remain the same. The struggle between wisdom and raw power, between humility and hubris, is the central conflict of the human story. The tale of Azazel and the Watchers isn't just an ancient myth. It's a living question we must answer every single day.